All right, so any of y'all who followed this channel for any length of time know that I am like exceedingly paranoid, especially of my personal information getting leaked out into, the ether somewhere. I mean, I am a radically black YouTube after all. I'm on like 5 or 6 government watch lists at this point that I know of. And so when I started getting phone calls or text messages from area codes that I didn't even exist, it kind of gets my mind to percolating about who and what else is a hold of my personal information. And that's not scary at all. Luckily, that's where today's sponsor, Aura, comes in. Aura alerts you when your data has been leaked onto the dark web. It also puts in requests to those data brokerage websites to have your information removed from off of their list. So now you ain't got to worry about at least so many phone calls and text messages from area codes that don't even exist. But that's not all, folks. You also get access to things like a password manager, a VPN, and fast fraud alerts that let you know when somebody is trying to access any of your accounts. So go ahead and use my link on the screen right now or in the description, or if you, for whatever reason, can't go to any of those things, just go to aura.com/Lil Bill for 14 days free. Again, that's aura.com/Lil Bill and protect your neck today, or pay for it. Yeah, literally pay for it, like with your credit, dog. Yeah.
All right, so depending on when this video drops, it's been anywhere between like 3 and several months since Kendrick Lamar not only put on the greatest Super Bowl halftime performance of all time, but single-handedly ended systemic racism by educating the entire world on Special Field Order number 15, a proclamation that literally no one except the graduates of your local HBCU knew about until KDOT made passing reference to it, because the rest of us, I guess, are just a bunch of illiterate morons who aren't tapped in enough to the culture to endorse sexual assault ritual just to get a Greek letter branded on our left butt cheek and then make that the entirety of our identity for the next 30 years. In order, that's just one of the many examples of white Americans' really bad habit of Indian giving stuff that ironically don't really belong to them to give in the first place, stuff that they even more ironically stole from the actual Indians in the first place, who aren't even Indians in the first place. And yeah, I do know that I'm starting to toe the Andrew Schultz line, but don't worry, I have a lot more material than just rereading Stone Toss comics aloud, because unlike that nigga, I'm actually funny. Yeah, come see about me. Here's the thing though, none of that actually happened. I mean, the halftime show part did happen, and it was a decent enough, it was a pretty good performance. I'm not going to lie, relative to what I and a lot of folk like me expected, but that's just it. I never really expected Kenny to stand on stage and tear a photo of Trump on Epstein Island in twain, because I mean, Sinead O'Connor did that like 30 years ago, didn't she? And y'all see what happened to her career afterward, right? Also, Sinead is like top 3 white women of all time, and she ain't number 2 or 3. The others are Jane Fonda and Dolly Parton in any order. But I also hear an argument for Adele or that chick from the Cranberries. What can I say? I have a thing for Anglophiles. Also, Bryce Dallas Howard or Christina Hendricks for what should be obvious reasons. Anyway, milk maidens aside, the point I'm getting at is it didn't hit for me the way that it did for some other folks, specifically a demographic among the delegation that I'll call the new blacks.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
All right, so those of y'all who've been following me for a minute know that around this time of year is when I begin to start panhandling for money like the junkies posted up at the off-ramp of your local freeway. But I'm doing it for a good cause, and no, Fent is not one. I know summer ain't get here yet, but before you know it, back to school season is going to be here, and a lot more people than what you know really can't afford to buy a new book bag every year for their kid, especially if they got multiple kids. And so for, I don't know how many years now, definitely for much longer than I've been to YouTube, me and a handful of folk from my local church have been trying to alleviate some of that burden. Oh, yeah, would you look at that? The single biggest facilitator of all things bad and bigoted, according to LeftTube, is actually doing the thing that most left tubers get paid to yap about, but don't actually do themselves. If it's true, is it still considered shade? I don't know. This why y'all don't see me on nobody else's channel, really. Anyway, y'all should already know the drill by now. I'm going to leave the GoFundMe link for this year's book bag drive both on this video on the screen somewhere and leave it in the description. So if you do have it, and that's if you have it, dog, you can help us be a help to somebody this year. Again, if you don't have it, please, man, don't go broke trying to help strangers that you probably never going to see in real life. Like I said, I ain't that type of left tube. I ain't really a left tube at all, or at least I'm trying to get out of that silo, dog. Why you think I keep? Why you think I keep antagonizing y'all? Leave me alone, man.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
See, my problem was never with the politics of Kendrick's performance, because I've been listening to Kendrick for like over 10 years now, and pretty much everything he writes is political in some degree. It's just that basically everything he said didn't resonate with me the way that it did a lot of other folk, because in my best Sunshine Anderson voice, I've heard it all before. Again, I just did a video a few months ago where I talked about how my father had a portrait of famous black faces that featured among them Elijah Muhammad and Marcus freaking Garvey. I told you all a while ago that my first real crush was on a little white girl named Stephanie, and I was rewarded for that with a trip to the Great Blacks and Wax Museum and a lifetime fear of noose knots as a result. I literally have a god brother whose legal name is Supreme. So my point is, this don't move me like it do some of y'all that are just now being exposed to it. And like I've said before, that's okay, dog. Before you click off and pout about how the bald dude on the camera hurt your feelings for not being woke enough, know that it's okay if you didn't know where 40 Acres and a Mule came from before Kendrick, even though, I mean, you know, that's been the name of Spike's production company for longer than Kendrick's been alive. But that, again, that's aside from the point. It's okay if this performance was the spark for your own personal journey into black identity politics. It's perfectly okay if the John hits for you. But for me personally, it just don't. And I don't think that anybody should have an issue with that. But because this is the internet where nuance does hang from a noose knot, you know somebody did have an issue. A lot of somebodies. But it got me to thinking about something that's been percolating in the back of my mind for a minute now. See, if you ask me, the backlash that not only I, but a bunch of other folk with similar sensibilities have gotten for not crowning Kendrick the new emperor of emancipation isn't just a bunch of K-bots running from channel to channel complaining that no one is willing to lick Kenny's cum off their face. I think it's something deeper than that, frankly. And I think it's indicative of the intersection of issues that have given rise to what I'll call the new black problem.
The struggle with a new black is even coming up with an idea of community in an age where it's essentialized, right? Yeah. In an age where you go on the internet and all you see are like, you see Kai Cenat skits, like he come up like iCarly. You just see him every 5 seconds and you're like, oh, well, it's a little laugh or whatever, but it's not really uplifting, right? Yeah. Like uplifting figures for me was like I know this is controversial, but like a Kobe Bryant. Me and my dad would sit down on the couch and watch Kobe Bryant. We watched Kobe Bryant drop 81 against the Toronto Raptors in Canada. And that's when I decided to be a basketball player. That's when I decided, yeah, niggas are cool. Like, you know what I mean? There's shit like that. There's shit like that in Canada that just, you don't get the same experience community or the same experience of, I guess, satiability within community. All you get is the degrading experience from an outside experience of whiteness, right? And then you're thrust into this double consciousness and then told how to react. I'm not gonna lie, you said there was also problems with new blacks. I see that too. Yeah. because that's also where me and my sister kind of divided, right? She kind of went the corporate route. She was like, you know what? Our parents brought us here. I got to get my degree. I got to get like all my requirements. I got to get myself together just so I can help my folks and everything, right? And I see that it's a very real point of view, because at the end of the day, no one gonna help her survive. She's a Black woman in this world. Yeah. She was thrust into that same environment, but she was older than me. She had to sign more papers than me. Like not my parents didn't know like any English really, so it was just me and my sister going back and forth with them, like relaying the experience, translating, doing all that stuff. Like I think me and my sister, that radicalized me and my sister before like our parents even, right? In essence, to like how much we have to work in this world, to how much we have to really rely on ourselves, even though our parents were amazing sources of love and stability and all that in this world. At the end of the day, they couldn't teach us the Black experience, and I feel like they failed us in a lot of ways, and that's horrible, right?
Now, be forewarned, some of y'all might hear some things that I'm about to say, and it'll rub you raw than running a rubber band up and down your bare dingling at full brick. But this is also not going to be the diatribe against the new Blacks that a lot of the rest of y'all are expecting and some of y'all want, low-key. I don't think that any of that is productive. And frankly, the way that a lot of folk talk about those other folk is kind of the core issue, to be honest. Rather, my point with this video is to understand why and where this divide came from, and perhaps at least begin to answer how we can bridge it. But that also means all of y'all are gonna have to fall back, because I swear to God, if I hear one more light-skinned suburbanite tell me about how not tapped in I am, I'm gonna beat the... Okay, so first we gotta at least try to understand what new Black even means. If you ask me, new Black is any Black person who is just learning to engage their own Blackness despite having had limited exposure to conventional Blackness to this point. This could be for a variety of reasons. Maybe you just didn't grow up in community with other Black folk, or if you did, you grew up without the trappings of, you know, a conventional Black experience. Think stuff like the Crisco can with the chicken or fish grease sitting on top of the kitchen counter, or the stove light on at nighttime signaling that the kitchen was now closed, and a behind whooping awaited anybody who thought otherwise. Sleeping head to head in the same bed as your cousins and waking up early on a Sunday morning to beat them all downstairs to get one game of Mortal Kombat in before being shepherded into your mom's hatchback for Sunday school, before sitting in a 2-hour service, not counting the extra hour tagged on for praise breaks and altar call. If you've never seen at least 3 of these between the Temptations, the 5 Heartbeats, the Jacksons, Dreamgirls, or the MC Hammer movie in one sitting, yeah, you're probably new Black is what I'm saying. At least if you're American. We'll come to that part later. But it's not just not having the experience though. Maybe you're like me and you did grow up with all of that, but you were force-fed Blackness until you threw up and wound up rebelling to it to the point of becoming anti-Black at some point, until enough exposure to milkmaids and chalk jockeys made you rethink that whole integration thing, and you wound up boomeranging back to the point of ultra Black to make up all of those years of lost melanin. So yeah, according to my own definition, Bill was new Black at one point. And that's why I do have empathy for a lot of y'all. Again, a lot of y'all, not all.
I lived it already. Funny enough, I think the biggest perpetrator of this is Kendrick Lamar, but that's another thing. But inside Euphoria, he said, there's no accents you can sell me. And that's how I feel. You can't repackage culture I live to me. So all this deep symbolism of, well, this represents this and this means this is what I lived it. I lived it. My grandmother was a crackhead. My mom was a high school dropout. These aren't stories, like the stories from the hood aren't like are new to me. I come from it. So when I see these images on the screens and I hear it in the music, it feels redundant. And I feel like you said, the people who enjoys these themes are overcompensating for the lack of living it, right? Because your experience wasn't that, you need to feel the pain of the trauma porn. You need to feel the pain of hearing these awful themes told to you again, seeing these awful scenes replayed on the screen, because that wasn't your reality. Like I say it all the time. Like I didn't learn this stuff from textbooks. I didn't go to school for sociology. This was me talking to niggas in my neighborhood. This is me learning. This is real life learning experience. And I think to be honest, to expand the point a little bit, I don't know how much you're gonna use it is, but I do think that's what pisses me off about it is the niggas who have the textbook knowledge try to downplay my real life knowledge as if like mine is inferior, as if because I didn't go to school and because I don't have the proper language to explain it the same way you do, that my opinion is less valid now. No, this is first-hand accounts. Point of view. This is first-person perspective versus third-person perspective. Like I lived it. Yeah. This is Call of Duty to me, nigga. Like this is like it's different. So I think that shit pisses me off the most about it. I don't know why Unc taught me the word petit bourgeois, and I feel like that's not a slur. I need a slur for these niggas. I've been trying to conjure up a slur, like cause these.
I call them cul-de-sackers.
I like that. But here's what the part about it is though, because right. You from Philly too. You from Philly adjacent. I'm from Philly. Yeah. So the story of my life is when I was in 8th grade, I was like start running around, try to be a tough guy. I lived on 22nd and Diamond, and my mom saw that. And I basically lived the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air story, where my mom was like, "You moving with your daddy up inside Uptown." Now Uptown, if you're from Philly, you know it's a little nicer. Mm-hmm. It's lawns, it's finished basements, and my mom was like, "You got love there," because I was getting to it, and that didn't do nothing but delay the inevitable for me. But while I was up there, I did like start to learn some of like the suburban culture. Like I got into like the Childish Gambinos of the world, and I got into like I tried to skateboard a little bit, but that didn't stop me from like not understanding who I was. I feel like it's this late in life realization that you will always be a nigga that bothers me. Like this is you 22 years old dating your white counterpart, realizing that you two will never be equals inside the eyes of most people. No matter how hard you try, they will always look at you inferior. No matter how hard you try, your white boyfriend always say, "Let me touch your hair." No matter how hard you try, your white girlfriend will always fetishize your big back body. There's no escaping that. So because they realize this later on in life, it's this extra onslaught of like, no, we need more of this. I'm like, no. We don't.
I get what it's like to feel like you've missed out on a whole part of your identity to the point that now you have to play catch up just to be welcomed back into the house. I get what it's like to feel like you've robbed yourself of community because you let a handful of dickheads bully you out of your own blackness because you didn't wear the right clothes or didn't listen to the right music. I am a black punk after all. But therein kind of lies the first part of this that I wanted to dive into. I've made reference to it in the Black Wrestler and Black Punk videos, but part of the reason for the rise of the new blacks is a lot of the old heads are a-holes. Let's just keep it a buck. Again, most if not all of this video is anecdotal, but it's been my experience that the reason I overcompensated in my early 20s, I guess, is because of constantly being told in one way, shape, or form that I wasn't black enough. Because I didn't go to public school, because I didn't listen to Gangsta Grillz mixtapes, because I played electric guitar and wore stuff like Doc Martens and plaid button-downs and still do. Despite the fact that, again, I was literally raised by Garveyites and recovering 5%ers, I wasn't black enough because I didn't wear bathing ape hoodies and see-through Air Forces from the wholesaler on Mulberry Street up in New York. And that was because when I was 12 and 13, I was actually riding up to New York to buy all of that garbage and hock it off the U-jack-offs. That's why. So yeah, who's black enough now?
At 15 years old was the first time I learned about slavery. And it's because Edmonton's curriculum purposefully just strips black culture of its connotation. Even though they've added like new initiatives like Black History Month and stuff, but it doesn't really satiate the need for I guess history or a community to be given to black people. Because at the end of the day, when we're kind of in these experiences of whiteness, we become choked by it and it becomes us in very subconscious ways. You know that experience of double consciousness? Yeah. I can't remember my first experience, I guess, like feeling it, because at the end of the day, my skin is dark as hell. So like I'm always going to be perceived as black. But you know, I remember thinking there was all these interactions are just super weird, because when I was in a bus, walking in the bus, my first day of grade 5 at this like all white school south side. I was like, I made it. Like we moved south side. This is an amazing school. I made it, right? I'm going to school. I got my backpack on. I'm like, I go walk to my seat and it says like Thea on the top there. And then beside it, like Colton, like this white person's name.
Yeah.
I try to sit down. This person's not letting me sit. I'm like, why can't I sit? And they're all pointing and laughing. I'm like, why can't I sit? And I'm just standing there confused. I'm like, why can't I sit? Just like giggling with them, like almost, right? Yeah. And it's always been like that in essence to like racism, where it's like,
yeah,
they will understand your degradation 9,000% better than you understand yours, because at the end of the day, the eyes doing the degrading are not yours, right? So to me, it's always been a sense of like teetering to like, what's true? What can I connect with? Like who's really for me? And that experience is it's patronizing to say, because it's just something you won't get unless you're Black, right? It's like who's gonna point me in this direction? Who's gonna show me the history that I want to see? Who's gonna tell me that I belong in this world? And in essence, those were basketball coaches, sadly, right? People who I guess latch on to Black boys. My guidance counselors, my English teacher, thank God, because without my English teacher, I wouldn't be doing YouTube. But like things like that, people like that, I really latched on to, and they weren't always Black. So in essence, I had to, rework a lot within myself too.
The more I think about it, most of the stuff I was doing in middle school, I really should have just been a street nigga low key. So I guess all those choir rehearsals and midnight prayer meetings did do something for me after all. I mean, aside from shame me into delayed orgasms that totally had no effect on my love life until marriage. Different video. Anyway, this is the kind of problem with the way we understand Blackness, right? I talked a while ago, in which video I don't remember and don't really care to go find out, about something in political science that is called a Thermidorian reaction. It's a reference to the French Revolution and how after the revolution, the most radical elements of it stepped into the power vacuum and overcorrected to the point of creating their own, some would even argue, worse reign of terror than the monarchy had initiated, until there was a revolt against the revolution that overcorrected the overcorrection to the point of creating Napoleon. So yeah, there you have it. That's what I think a lot of this is. People who, for one reason or another, in one way or another, were told that they weren't Black enough. And now they've overcorrected to the point of, in my opinion, gassing some things more than they really need to be, just to reaffirm their own Blackness. And if you say that out too loud, now you're the one who's out of touch or not tapped into the culture, whatever the culture is supposed to be. And some of y'all are probably in the comments now saying some sort of, well, that's a generation crash out for you. And yeah, I do think that the general divide thing is a factor, and I'll talk about that a bit later on. But let's not get this twisted. It ain't just Zoomers and alphas doing this, y'all. By the time this video does drop, it'll be close to like a year, now that I think about it, that I did record a video that I'm still going back and forth over whether to send up a bill or not, about the whole biracial isn't Black thing and how internet brain rot that is, and I still think it is. But toward the end of that video, I made the point that the main reason it is so stupid to me is because when I was growing up, it wasn't even worth the discourse. It didn't matter what you looked like, or even what your parents looked like, or even where your parents came from. If you had at least one matter of fact, if you had a grandparent, some relative that could reasonably call themselves Black, and you moved like a Black person, then you were Black, or at least as Black as you allowed yourself to be. That's just what it was. That for Black grandparents BS was something I had never even heard of until social media, particularly when Twitter became the app of choice for YouTube University alumni. What I'm saying is, a lot of folk found their tribe online and then decided to amplify each other's voices while sequestering themselves in the echo chamber of shared experience, to the point that once they finally did venture into the outer wilds, they were convinced that their voice was the only one that mattered. Which really just sounds like the internet in a nutshell, does it not? But perhaps more alarming is that unwittingly, what those folks did was use the master's tools for their own ends, pointing the finger at the other to validate their own blackness, which in some people's cases was othered by somebody else as not being black enough. Y'all see the whole Thermidorian connection yet? If y'all have ever read the Mask comic books, this is basically what I call the Stanley Ipkiss effect, where the loser finally gets his lick back and in the process proves that he was just as big a butt wipe as his own bullies, if not more so. What I'm saying is the 4 black grandparents people are no better than the you talk white people, who themselves are no better than the this is the problem with black America people. But again, whose fault is that? Y'all taught them to be this way, low-key. Y'all taught them that a very specific presentation of blackness is the only authentic one, and that they needed to present that blackness in order to validate themselves. So now they just found another way to do so. Y'all were the ones who made blackness not only a monolith, but exclusionary at that. So a lot of these folk online telling people like me that we're not tapped in enough for Kendrick Set to hit us hard enough to tweet about how much it changed the world, all they did was find Big Bro's blick. If they used it against them. Sounds like a Jay-Z documentary. Oh wait, Trap Lord Ross already did it. Like I said about hoteps and petite bourgeois blacks, new blacks, or at least the permutation of new blacks we have now, are in a lot of ways the old heads' fault for not passing the sticks to that one cousin who came over with a Pantera t-shirt and a Blu-ray copy of Dude, Where's My Car? That movie actually slaps, though, not gonna lie. I think that there's probably no better example of new blackness than who's, in my opinion, the patron saint of it, Colin Kaepernick. Now, before we go any further in the movie, understand that I'm not saying that because of Colin's biraciality. I literally just dispelled that a couple minutes ago. That said, there is an insignificant number of biracial kids, specifically those biracial kids who grew up out of community, especially out of community in the suburbs, who do fall into the new black category. But again, it's not because of their dissension, it's because of their socialization. So let's please stay out of my comments with that race science BS. We're moving on now. Like, if all I said up top doesn't for some reason make sense for you, Colin's journey from stock photo ambiguous boy to Malcolm lowercase x is basically new blackness in a nutshell, if you ask me. I think it's important to understand that despite the way it was presented by the media, Colin didn't suddenly have a political epiphany after getting benched. And despite the way some outlets covered it, it wasn't to draw attention to himself after losing his job. But I mean, that's journalism for you these days, right? A couple of Google searches, wiki entries, and maybe a subreddit or two before extrapolating a topic based on your own implicit bias. Yeah, Trap Lord Ross has entered the chat, and yeah, he can come see me if he has a problem. Colin's journey into full Give Us Free started at least during his undergrad days, and arguably went back further than that. I'm not going to get too deep into Colin's backstory because one, Flimlo Raps already did that a few years ago, and two, Colin's made a bag off of telling it himself ad nauseum, so y'all can go look it up on your own time. But Colin, being the biracial adopted child of the whitest couple you know, was negotiating his blackness at least as early as his junior high years, at least according to his own self-created biopic, which you can find on Netflix, by the way. And this series, I think, encapsulates the complexity of not just Colin as a person, but a lot of the points I want to touch on if I haven't already. I won't go into too much detail with the actual content of the series, but Colin in his early life was faced with a variety of what we'd call microaggressions from not just outsiders, but classmates and his own parents, particularly when it came to his presentation. After kowtowing to the powers that be more times than he felt comfortable, Colin did eventually choose blackness and chose it unapologetically, well before he ever got to the league and arguably before he got to college. But that's just it. Like, watching this series back, two things become apparent to me. Colin wants you to understand not only just how black he actually is, but how much he identifies with his blackness, to the point of basically pistol whipping you with his identity at every opportunity. But perhaps as importantly, he wants you to know just how much he struggled to get to this point. He wants you to know that he struggled just as much as you have, even if not in the same ways. And I mean, it kind of feels like he's overcompensating for something, you know?
Obama is a mulatto. That's the one drop rule.
I mean, listen, we can sit here and go back and forth about just how much a white passing biracial man does actually struggle compared to someone like me if he didn't choose said struggle as his identity. But again, this isn't that video. That's coming in a few months. This series feels like the new black version of the tragic mulatto trope, is what I'm saying. It isn't so much that he's stuck between two worlds, it's that the world he wants won't accept him until he proves he belongs, which, I mean, that was kind of Mary's whole subplot in Sinners, wasn't it? Which, I mean, bet he's not wrong, but there does come a point, in my opinion, where it feels like, you know, you're doing too much, dog. You know what I mean? Like we get it. You're so black that you brought a Hennessy pound cake to the church bake sale. You're so black that your daughter's dance studio used mamushi for her dance recital. You're so black that your son wears a grill as a mouth guard during football practice. Like, nigga, we get it already. You're the blackest thing in Hollywood since Wesley Snipes. But dog, you're insisting upon yourself now.
It insists upon itself, Lois.
It's like those people who would wear those "Not My Ancestors" shirts unironically back before they realized how cringe it was. Or the mayor of Baltimore wearing a DEI hire hoodie and walking out the "Not Like Us" on election night. Find that clip, Clarence, so they see what I'm talking about.
They not like us. They not like us. They not like us.
Like, call me a hater or whatever, but that clip right there is what we really getting down to. And it's also what a lot of y'all look like to me on Super Bowl Sunday. And I'm gonna be real, I was just going to let y'all have it until you decided to anoint yourselves the arbiters of black identity and then try to just don't get it. Anybody who didn't treat that John like the new mountaintop sermon.
I think it's important to make sure that we not talking about just corny niggas, because being a corny nigga that just a weirdo is different than being a nigga that's trying to catch up. And I feel like oftentimes when we have these conversations about these new blacks, people get misconstrued as if like we are trying to other part of the community, when like, no, we're not trying to other you niggas. We trying to, first of all, we want to tell some of y'all niggas, some of these niggas already here, they just don't know it yet. Otherly, the niggas who want to be here, we, like you said, we gotta tell you, slow your roll. We're here already. We don't, there is standards and practices that you gotta learn first. There's standards and I know you're late to this party, but get in line. And I think that there's a certain hubris, there's a certain amount of just cockiness that comes from that side, where there is no slowdown. It's, I know everything. Your story sounds like one of being like, oh shit, I don't know everything. All right, cool. Let me shut the fuck up. But I feel like to do that takes a level of intelligence. Like the old saying, like, shut up when smart niggas talking to you. I shut up. I could tell when smarter niggas talking to me. I shut up and I listen, because I want to soak up game so I can go repeat these things. I'm good at comprehending ideas and giving them back to people who are dumber than me. So that's what I need to do. That's like kind of my place in this life. But I feel like a lot of these niggas don't recognize that there are people smarter than you who are going to tell you these ideas, and it's not your job to talk back. It's not your job to do anything but understand what's being told to you and then go teach that to somebody else. Yeah, I mean, that's your only goal. I feel like we on this side, we've been patient, but they have become the majority of pro-black voices on the internet. So it looks like that's what all of it looks like. I made that video a few weeks back ago when I was kicking like the whole leftist black to black back end, because I do feel like a lot of this shit is niggas sitting around circle jerking each other and not talking and not telling ideas to different people. One of my biggest pet peeves about politics, period, especially black politics, is that most black people are so politically unaware for 3 years and fucking 6 months. And then for the last 6 months leading up to an election, that's when black folk are invested. But not just the like black folk who aren't already invested inside politics, but the black folk who follow this shit and understand what's going on. That's when they come back and be like, yo, black folk, y'all gotta come out and vote. Y'all gotta don't reach out now. Don't reach out now. Because you ain't been doing the work. You haven't built the trust with these people. You haven't gone to talk to them. You haven't taken the ideas, the bigger ideas, and made them smaller. Because a lot of these ideas are hard to extrapolate and make it to like bite-sized pieces. It's not hard, but there is no work being done. And I feel like that is more important when like we talking about like why it's important for these niggas to get out. Because I think that a lot of it is not knowing how to talk to those kind of people. Not knowing how, like, I said it, I say like this. I got 2 younger brothers. One is 21 and one is 25. Both of them got kids. I'm 27. I'm no kids. Both of them got kids. One of them works in construction. The other one works in fast food. These niggas got real jobs and real responsibilities. They have no time to follow politics. They have no time. There's no time. Like, they have real life issues right here in front of them. I give a fuck about what the office got going on. How am I going to pay my electric bill this month? So it's our duties, our responsibility as more politically inclined Negroes to come back and seize these folk. And I think that's the idea we trying to get at here is like, well, how can you be so pro-black, but your pro-blackness doesn't extend to these kind of niggas over here? Shut the fuck up and listen. And not only shut the fuck up, but listen. When you listen, bring it back.
But back to Mayor, my president is black for a second. I found this specifically to be cringe, not because it wasn't authentic, like I genuinely believe that bro is really that corny, but because in my opinion, it turns blackness from an identity into an aesthetic. And in that vein, a not insignificant number of folk then turn that aesthetic into their whole identity. But again, we got to point back to the niggas who did that with an even more specific aesthetic to really get down to brass tacks. The people who clowned their classmates for doing theater and listening to Linkin Park or whatever. So let me get back to Colin for a minute. I don't know, man. I'm not saying that he's inauthentic. Quite the opposite, really. But I do think that even when the whole protest thing was ongoing, Colin was always a little too preoccupied with optics, to the point that when he did wind up getting run out of the league for those optics, instead of dedicating the bulk of his newfound free time to actual direct action, he spent the bulk of it building his brand, which I don't know, maybe he thought that was the most effective way to foster the direct action that he did wind up initiating, because I'm not sitting here and saying that he didn't, because he most definitely did. But again, if that be the case, isn't that the problem right there, man? Like, there's a reason Malcolm said what he said about celebrities being relied upon to lead the revolution or whatever, which again, considering the impetus for this video is so appropriate, it's scary. It's kind of like I've been doing this whole black and proud thing for a hot minute now. I guess the point I'm getting at is Colin's story is way more nuanced and complex than the extremes of both sides painted it out to be. Like, let's not forget, supposedly his biggest thing was always getting his job back after being blackballed for, you know, his freedom fighting.
You had those dreams from when you were a kid.
Even though that job became less and less a priority as he became so much of a celebrity that riding the pine for a poverty franchise was far less appealing than being BLM's unofficial brand ambassador. Y'all know what I mean? If you ask me, Colin is neither Sean King nor Huey Newton, but somehow he's painted as either one or the other of those extremes depending on where you stand. And I think to a lot of people that propped him up as the latter, it was to overcorrect for the people who insisted upon the former. But in the process of the endless discourse over the protest itself and even the protester, most folk kind of just forgot what he was supposed to be protesting to begin with, or at least the actual protest itself became so talked about to the point of distracting from its purpose. I'm not even saying that it was necessarily his fault that the protest got more attention than actual police brutality. But what I am saying is that protest wasn't nearly as impactful as some folk made it out to be, yet we glazed him ceaselessly for it, to the point that we basically made him Black Jesus for the second half of my 20s. But that's the thing, we've done this before, man, and that's what folk like me keep coming back to. We did it with Kareem. We did it with Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. We did it with Ali, who literally lost his title in 3 years of his prime for fighting the power. Colin Kaepernick was by no means the first pro athlete to use his platform to draw attention to Black issues. He wasn't even the only one to do it during his time. 2 years earlier, a bunch of NBA superstars like LeBron and Kobe, and yes, even Kyrie, wore those I Can't Breathe shirts, remember, during warm-ups to bring attention to the death of Eric Garner that same year. The same year as Colin's protest, Rams players walked out during introductions with their hands raised, mirroring the position that Michael Brown took before he was shot and killed by police that same year. Going back to LeBron, he established the Promise Academy in partnership with J.P. Morgan and Chase in the University of Akron, so that kids who graduated from that school will receive a full ride to that university. But none of those actions were nearly as provocative as Colin taking a knee during the national anthem. And that's why we remember him and what he did so much, and why it was such a hot topic of conversation for so long. And that's the problem, man. Listen, I'm not trying to take away from the symbolism of Colin's protest or even the symbolism of Colin himself. But at EOD, what did any of that accomplish besides pissing off a bunch of boat truckers and spurring on some Google searches on police brutality that ultimately led to no real direct action to address it? What did I Can't Breathe ultimately accomplish? What did Choose Love and End Racism ultimately do for the NFL besides rub that peach-faced piss willer we call a president raw enough to complain about it to Roger? Again, y'all can call me a hater or whatever, but I've seen this story way too many times that it hurts. And honestly, it kind of pisses me off that 5 years after the whole world marched for days, tore down Confederate statues, and renamed their streets BLM Boulevard, that we all are still falling for the same doggone okie doke, man. That's my thing. Nothing substantive, at least as far as I can find, came directly from the anthem protest. Nothing but a bunch of discourse and outrage that basically died out by the next season when Cap was out of the league. But that's not the part we remember, because it's the part we don't want to remember. We remember Colin sacrificing his career on the cross of coloredness, and of that being the example of how protests ought to look, even if said protests ultimately mean nothing beyond their symbolism. I'm gonna be real, a lot of us are so stuck on being on the so-called right side of history that we don't really care about how much that history actually amounts to being anything tangible, so long as we can say that we were a part of the history. You know what I'm saying? Being seen by the right people, having the right opinion is what too many folk are satisfied with. I think that activism for a lot of people, I'm not gonna lie, stops at just that. You know what I mean? And to make it even worse, they do little, if anything, with that opinion besides share it with other folk.
Folks are afraid to be revolutionaries. Folks are afraid to put the work in. I tell niggas all the time, like, I'm not moved by any multi-millionaire artist telling me that the revolution won't be televised. I'm not moved by that, because you're on television saying it. I'm not moved by this, nigga. If you really want to do something, we gotta go outside. Listen, at my core, I'm an anarchist. At my core, I know that the only way to fix this shit is to burn this shit down. But I know that, like I learned, to reference pop culture, like I learned during the 100 men versus one gorilla, niggas are afraid to be martyrs. Niggas, a lot of that talking point was niggas being like, well, as soon as the gorilla killed one of y'all, we all running. I was like, no, you got to know that some of us gonna die. Some of us gonna die. But if some of us die, but the result is better for everybody, is that not a worthy death? But I think the easier option is, I'm going to put on the face, I'm going to put on the front and not pretend, but I'm going to sell you this version of progress, to sell you this version of this neo freedom fighter bullshit. When it ain't that, my nigga. You're not doing that. And if you want to talk about that Kendrick bullshit, that was probably the worst. This last year been the worst year of my life. I'm not gonna lie. Not only do I have a disdain for his music, just personally because I don't like the way he rap, but I also have a disdain for niggas who are fake deep. I hate fake deep niggas. I hate niggas who I can tell that these ideas are very surface level with you, and I can tell when a nigga's pandering to me, and I don't like to be so shit. Shit. I'm not no nigga in the corner you can sell a nick to and call it a dime. You can't do that with me. I can eyeball it and see that. But I feel like a lot of these dudes don't have that same or maybe it's them wanting. Do people just really yearn for that kind of for freedom? People yearn for that kind of revolutionary, but we don't have it in today's time, so we have to settle for these commercial versions of it. And I feel like that sucks. Like, why are we settling? We as the consumer have more power than we actually realize. And if we decided that we don't want your watered down version of progress, we don't have to accept it. But I think some people are just really desperate for it. People really want it. And I'm not gonna lie, that gives me hope that one day there will be. I always tell people at the time, like, I don't think I'm the leader that my people need, but I am a soldier in the war, and whenever that guy comes, I will follow him to the bitter end. I don't know if everybody has the mentality, or if they just blowing smoke, or maybe just get you brownie points on the timeline. Maybe I think that's a lot of it too, just being able to say that you are on the right side of history instead of making history happen.
Which now brings me back to Kendrick. Look, nobody but Kendrick really knows what Kendrick wanted that performance to be, but having a similar background as I don't believe he meant it to be taken as the grand declaration of Black Power's impending percolation through the political zeitgeist, because that's what TPAB was supposed to be, if y'all don't remember. And we all remember how much that album did to unmake the white supremacist institutions that make all the problems he rapped about on that album possible, right? Or did y'all just forget that Damn exists, and that's what that album was supposed to be about him realizing that he's not the Messiah? Or did you even listen to that album? Which is kind of what I'm getting at. And even with all of that said, if you did take it like that, then more power to you, whatever. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. For a lot of folk my age, that's what Beyonce's set was 10 years ago. Basically, Beyonce's entire gimmick between Lemonade and Renaissance, and you can argue that this current era is just a continuation of her Lemonade and Black is King persona, was that performance. I genuinely don't care when, where, or how you hopped onto the Black Power bandwagon. Everybody has a different where, when, and why. What I do have a problem with is when, as soon as you hop on, you decide it is now your job and your job only to take the reins and drive it to market, even if you barely know how to. And that's what a lot of y'all did and are doing. And that's the part that pisses me off. All right, so now I've shown y'all enough empathy. It's angry unk time. I'm finna get in that behind, all right? I didn't start getting aggravated until I started seeing stuff like, you're just not tapped in, or you're just out of touch, old man, or my favorite, it wasn't for you, it was for the culture. Nigga, I am the culture. The stone cold fact is a lot of y'all are just as soft as you are loud. That's why you got mad about people saying the Super Bowl wasn't that deep to us. Again, I wasn't going to say nothing because I know how y'all get and I wanted y'all to have y'all's moment, but then you asked me what I thought and I had to tell you. And because what I told you wasn't what you wanted to hear, then you started with that not black enough BS. Y'all literally do not know how to process an opinion that isn't an unequivocal cosign. And that part is not anecdotal. I talked about this in Gen Z is Undateable, the video that I did over a year ago. Y'all could go look at my back catalog for it. But Gen Z is the most conflict averse of all currently in the workforce, to the point that the #1 request for job training that many of y'all have is interpersonal communication. And that's those of y'all who don't just pack up and hightail it when the kitchen gets too hot. Again, if y'all want all the numbers on that, refer to that video. But the main takeaway here is that a not insignificant number of y'all just don't know how to talk to people who don't think and behave exactly the way that you do. So you just don't do it. And then when you do, now you decide you're the arbiter of culture, even though you've been here for lesser time than I've been sexually active. This is in part because the internet affords folk the privilege of talking sideways without the pleasure of a fist in their face afterwards. But it's also because there really isn't anywhere for y'all to socialize besides school and the internet. So all y'all know is clicking up with like-minded folk and sequestering yourselves in the safety of your tribe when challenged. And I'm gonna keep it a buck. We, and by we, I mean old and older Negroes, ain't really do y'all no favors with that. Again, instead of teaching y'all better, we turned to ridicule, and y'all responded in kind. I can't really get mad at you for that part. We robbed y'all of the sleepover and streetlight experience and then laughed in your face when you didn't get the references. So you created your own version of the black experience unique to the internet age, as did we with the analog era. So understand, I'm not saying that your experience isn't any less authentically black than ours, but it also isn't more authentic. And that's the part I think some folk are missing, and missing purposefully. Which brings me back to the overcorrection piece. I think part of the problem is we, and by we I specifically mean us, like 30 and older Negroes, tend to use new black as a pejorative. And I don't think that's fair or accurate, because again, we've all been new black at some point. Nobody came out the womb fighting the power.
The revolution will not be televised.
We had to learn blackness by experiencing it. And truth be told, we are all still learning, and learning from other people at that. That's the thing. Even if you did grow up in community and with conventionally black experiences, if you know all the lyrics to the Dreamgirls soundtrack, or you spend your weekends playing spades with one hand and dominoes with the other, that doesn't make you not new black. I know a lot of y'all are going to be salty, but a lot of y'all are new black to me, as I am to some of my elders. It's because the longer you live this life, the more you see, and hopefully the more that you learn, and thus can pass on to somebody else if they're willing to receive it. That's kind of my point, man. Despite what you may have learned on subreddits, there will never be a point in your life where you've got it all figured out. You and I and everyone else yet breathing is and will remain new black, so long as there's somebody from whom we can learn to navigate the black experience. And I'm not talking exclusively about an American black experience either. And that's the place me and other folk be coming from. At EOD, whether we want to admit it or not, blackness, what it is and is not, is both relative and nebulous. As my ride or die homie Bellamy put it one time, everybody's blackness can be and has been questioned at some point. That's what happens when you create an identity group that's so deep and wide that nobody really knows what makes us us besides descending from Africans. It's like if you removed all the borders from Europe and then told everybody who traces their lineage back there somewhere to just figure it out. That's literally what being black is, which is why the whole Africans sold Africans thing is such a smooth brain way to deflect from the slave trade. It makes me think that the people who say that had their synapses fried cyberpunk style. But all of that being said, I'm going to go back to the 4 black grandparents thing or whatever, because just like that discourse, I think a lot of this old black, new black stuff, it really is just internet brain rot, man. Again, I'm just speaking from my own experience, but I really haven't seen any of that discourse out in the wild like that. I really think it's primarily a very small but very vocal minority of very undersexed folk who dominate internet discourse because there's no peen or punani anywhere within sniffing distance for them to hop onto. That's now coloring our perception of what types of convos are actually being had between people that are not hiding behind profile pictures, because again, the internet for a lot of us is our primary, if not sole, means of socialization. I think there's always been an understanding in the real world, at least, that with each new generation comes a new interpretation of the black experience that is relative to the general human experience of the time. It just so happens that this and every succeeding generation's experience is now inextricably tied to the internet. And I think it's what makes this newest version of New Blackness a little more, let me just call it more obstinate than what I can remember.
Thank God that there's a large section of the community because of like Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, a lot of really good community work done on the grounds, online and all that. There's been a really big, I guess, drift like further left, and that's a really good thing. But the essence is the borderline for starting fathoming your experience in this world is so right that it becomes almost surreal in dichotomy when you actually experience it. When I lived 20 years in this world, whereas when I was 15, you know what I mean, just learning about slavery. So it's odd because there does have to be a coaxing method, especially for younger people on TikTok, because they're more connected than ever. I never in my life could open my phone and just scroll and see 30 Black people at the same time, have 30 different Black experiences, intricately laid out with sociology, with text, with sites, with all of that. This is an amazing world to be intellectual Black leftist in. But that one thing that will do is depress a nigga if you don't have the right structure around. But I had to actively go out and, you know, find my vestiges of community, find you, find FD, find Foreign, find all these people that could ground me in the midst of learning about, you know, Black people being eaten during slavery, like Black people being worn as clothes during slavery, the KKK displacing and burning down multiple Canadian villages, Canadian Black towns, you know, which were actually in my area that I never learned about. You could crash the fuck out if you're not careful, right? Because that's mentally a lot to throw on somebody. And it's a societal harm, and at a very higher level, systemic injustice and purposeful injustice that they put on you, right? They try to make you go, I feel like they try to make you go mad on purpose, right? They try to tell you this experience that you're experiencing. It's not tangible. It's not real. Like, you know, those cops don't hate you. Those cops are just doing their job. The cops always need a gun by them. The cops always need a taser. The cops always need to like pull you by the side of the road and ask you your name and write down your ID and everything, you know. And look, it's heinous, because I gotta tell all the young folk out there all the time, TikTok's amazing and I'm glad y'all are learning, but fuck, y'all gotta go outside and talk to people and relay those experiences. Y'all gotta learn with people at the same time, at the same pace. Because me becoming radicalized the way I was, it also was a harm to my community. Because at the end of the day, I was yelling about all this shit, and my Sudanese parents, my Sudanese community isn't at the same pace I am. I should be trying to help coax them to that pace and uplift all of us. When I decided to do that, that's when, you know, all that happened with the police cameras, and we were able to like get that instated in Alberta, and I was able to actually do better material work. Because I was actually working out of a place of love, not out of a place of hostility, not out of a place of frustration, not out of a place of, and I don't want to tell people don't feel those ways, because you should at the end of the day. But fam, you got to have like some kind of connectivity at the end of the day. You got to have something you come home to, and something you got to say, oh, I love it here. And I love that connection to me, and I love my community, and I love you can't just be going online and allowing them to, whoa.
Understand something. It's not a Black thing or even an age thing. It's a people thing, specifically a people on the internet thing. The exorbitant amount of time we spend online and away from contrary opinions, I think, conditions us all for obstinance. I think there's an insignificant number of folk who have been conditioned to hold contempt for contrary opinions, especially when those opinions come from someone not in their peer group. And I get it. In a lot of ways, we made y'all this way, thinking the more that we clowned y'all, the more y'all would emulate us. And in some ways, y'all did, just in the worst way possible, turning Blackness from an identity into a club, one that's based just as much on who's excluded as who's tapped in. And I'll be the first to hold that L, but that says so some of y'all need to sit down and shut up and let the grown folks have the floor sometimes, man. Again, Angry Unc is back, ready to get in that behind once again for the second time. That's the issue, and it's not necessarily, again, a Black or Zoomer problem. Again, it's an internet thing. For all the reasons I stated earlier, a lot of y'all don't know how to listen so much as you just be waiting for your turn to talk, and it turns a lot of folk off from even bothering to do the knowledge with y'all to begin with. I talked about this on Olay and Friends a while ago, but there is an air of elitism in this online Black space that's not dissimilar from the same kind of elitism that made me say F bread to way back when. If you don't speak a certain way, if you didn't read the right books, if you don't know the right etymology for certain concepts, even if you can still articulate it in a way where anyone with half a working brain can comprehend it, then you just don't get it, and therefore aren't worth the engagement unless it is to be ridiculed. Like, that was literally what my Hotep video was about, if y'all don't remember. And the irony is, half the time it's for the most basic Black Power 101 stuff. Like, I cannot tell you how many HBCU alumni, most of them fresh out of commencement, mind you, who think they know better than me because I have a Hotep hat in my profile pic, until I explain to them how their historically Black alma mater was founded by a white man, and then they stroll right on back to the frat house with their penis tucked between their balls and their tongues behind their teeth where they belong. I swear to God, y'all would be a lot more humble if you knew how goofy them strolls actually be looking. That's why I like making fun of frats. I'm not going to lie. Jokes aside, though, like I said before, I'm not going to trick myself into thinking that the most extreme and vocal portions of the internet are reflective of real life, unless it's white people. Like, we've been here before. We know how y'all roll. But also, like I said before, I do think real life is reflected online, maybe a little bit more than some of us like to give credit sometimes, specifically those of us who the internet is not the center of our entire existence like it is for a lot of younger folk and folk who, can't get out for one reason or another. Some of y'all are elitist. I'm gonna keep it a buck, but then some of y'all are exclusionary unnecessarily. Some of y'all think your peers are too dumb to get it, and then others of y'all think that those people are weirdos for getting good grades and going to college. Personally, I really couldn't care less how many conversations that performance started. I couldn't care less how many white housewives decided to Google what 40 acres and a mule means, because again, I've heard it all before. But that's just me, and I think that should be okay. The same way that I think that it's okay if you did get gassed for all that stuff. What I don't think is okay, however, is being satisfied with those conversations being started and then going nowhere. And I feel like I've been around the block enough to know that that's probably where all these breakdown videos and think pieces are going to wind up going. Nowhere, like it usually has and usually does.
A white leftist or a Black leftist or whatever, the vibe switches like this, essentially, when you start talking to them subjectively. It's like they almost create a kind of figure when you're online content creating. And I'm very guilty of this too, of creating a devilish figure of what a white person looks like, or what my opposition looks like, what a coon looks like, what a Hotep looks like. That's even separate from like what any other Black person would even think, just because of my different Black experience. You know what I mean? So I want to say to y'all, like, online isn't real in essence of a day-to-day experience. You got to go outside and determine what a day-to-day experience of Blackness looks with you. You got to set up your own communities of Blackness and your own experience of survivability, your own experiences of all this. And if your parents haven't taught you that as a new Black, I'm so sorry, but you're gonna have to teach yourself that. And that's tough. And that's tough. But you're gonna have to go outside and teach yourself that, or you're gonna go like mad in this world and essentially just become hyper individualist, which is what they want you to be. They want you to stand on this podium looking crazy, right? They don't want you in community like spurring change. They don't want you talking to other people and influencing their point of view. They want you to be reactionary to the next take. Get off Twitter, get off this, go outside. Like, yeah, that's my point of view.
I thought about this for a long time. Real work gotta happen. First thing first, we need big. And this is when I talk to when this is when I come and kick FD back, and I love Unc. But Unc gotta stop making. He gotta stop using his big $5 words. Niggas like him gotta stop using big $5 words. Cause like I get it. Yeah. That's this is the language you speak in, right? But the people don't speak that language. Right. Like this, the people don't speak that language. So we gotta simplify ideas. Like so that's number one. Get black folk to understand that leftist ideals are the ideas of progress, and there will be no progress if you don't understand this. And also, as much as I hate it, we got to teach class consciousness. We got to teach. We got to teach white. We got to teach our people to not have this hate for white folk. Even though I know it's hard. Trust me, I know. But the white folk that's in your neighborhood, he's not your enemy. Those white people in South Philly, it's not your enemy. They are on the same side as us. So these simple ideas, and I think it starts with us, to be honest. Like it starts with us, the people with platforms, people with voices, the people that understand the ideas, to make sure the ideas get to them. Because just like anything inside art or creativity, the consumer doesn't know what they want. We give them what they want. They don't know. The algorithm makes sure that people open YouTube and open TikTok and open IG Reels, and they're just scrolling. It's mindless scrolling. They don't know what they want. And until the algorithm gives it to them, and we got to make sure that we are giving them what they want.
I feel like a lot of the discourse around the Super Bowl specifically reminds me of the discourse that has been being had about sinners in the last month or so, which can all be summed up in a comment I got on that video that's on my second channel. So y'all should definitely go subscribe to that if you want that science. What the person said is something that I and a few of the people within this space have echoed offline and away from the prying eyes of the new black portion of the delegation. And that's that this movie wasn't that deep for those of us who have basically been, for lack of better phrasing, brainwashed with this culture, with this history, with this identity pretty much from birth. But that doesn't make it bad. It doesn't mean that we dislike it. Quite the opposite, actually. Seeing Kendrick drop references to Playing the Game and Field Order 15, or watching a movie about Irish vampires that I could not help but read as an allegory for Elvis, again, go watch the second channel for that science, didn't feel like a revelation. It felt familiar to me in a comforting way. It felt like home is what I'm saying. It felt good that for once a piece of art was made explicitly for us, by us, without too much care being given to whether the uninitiated would be in on the joke or whatever. Something I've said in the past is one of my main gripes with a lot of black surrealist art these days. And again, if it was revelatory for you, then good on you, man. Have fun on your journey down the rabbit hole. Also, good luck. I promise you're going to need it. But just because it's new to you, don't mean the rest of us got to act like we ain't been here just so you feel special. What I'm saying is two things. One, let's stop reducing blackness to a performance, man. Because somebody, matter of fact, many people have taken that performance and have made it into their identity. And you really can't complain about the tables being turned when you're the one who wouldn't give them a seat at that table to begin with. The second thing is, a lot of folk really aren't as woke as they think they are, or else... and y'all are going to be mad at me for this, you would have been here before the Super Bowl. But again, that's okay. It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly all right if you weren't here before then. But that being said, if that was your kickoff moment, if that was your jumping off point, then shut up, go to the back of the car and have a seat and let the folk who been here before lead you on this journey, man. The moment is past, is what I'm saying. And unless y'all plan on making that moment into a movement, I don't want to hear no more about how the revolution won't be televised. The moral of the story, I guess, is don't ask me for no more music opinions, man, because I am that petty that I will complain loud enough, and I'm going to find a way to make content out of it. So, yep, 40 chess, nigga.
I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all. I'm blickety black, blacker than black, black, I'm blacker than black, yo, because I'm black and I'm back. Yo, I'm black and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all.